everyone. I hope you're doing good today. It's bright and early this morning on barbecue day. So we are up early to get our cobbler ready and in the oven so that it has plenty of time to cook before we have to leave. So today we're going to be making a giant peach cobbler and a giant berry cobbler. And we're making it from scratch. It's not hard at all. It's one of the easiest desserts that you can make. So I'm going to go ahead and put you down. And hopefully you will not fall over on me. Then grab a pot holder. So in the oven, I have our big, just disposable aluminum pan, and I put a stick and a half of butter in it. So this is the, I don't know the actual size of it, but it's about double the size of a 9.5 by 13 pan, and it's a little bit deeper. So this is a great pan to use if you're making a big quantity of really anything for this type of an event. And because we had to pick up some things from Sam's yesterday, I grabbed a giant can of sliced peaches. But of course you can get just regular size cans in the grocery store or Walmart. So this is 105 ounce can, 6.6 pounds. And this, I think, is probably going to be just right for the pan that we're using. I've gone ahead and opened the can with my Tupperware can opener. If you don't have one of these and you use handheld can openers, this is awesome. I haven't had it for less than a year, I think. Never had one before, but I love it. And the cool thing, once you cut, and I've already taken the lid off, but once you cut the lid off, then you just grab it and pick it up. The other thing is with this can opener, it cuts around the underside of the rim, so there's no sharp edge here. I don't know if you can see that very well, but so no slicing your finger open, especially with this big can. And then you can just discard it and you're good to go. So this, I'm just going to carefully dump the whole can. That's just about right. What you want is the fruit to completely cover the bottom of your pan. Not too thick, but completely cover. And then of course the butter is mixed in there now. So I'm just gonna pick you up, show you what we have. So just, you can see it's not really deep. We left all the juice in because we're gonna need that juice when the dough part of the cobbler starts to cook and rise. I'm just looking for a good knife. I'm going to go through here and just really quickly and without precision, just do a quick chop on these peaches because they're going to come apart anyway. And of course they're already easy to cut, but just to kind of give it a little head start because we're going to be serving quite a few people. And if you watch the video for the baked beans that I made, that was for the entire barbecue, so for 150 people. The desserts, there are a group of ladies who are all making desserts, so this isn't 150 servings worth between the two cobblers that we're making, but it's going to be quite a few servings. All right, so I just did a quick chop on those just to break it into a few smaller pieces. Now I've already mixed our batter for the first cobbler, and then I'm going to show you how to do it on the second one. So we have, again, this is like the easiest dessert probably that you can make that's a homemade baked dessert. This has 4 cups of flour, 4 cups of sugar, and just under 4 cups of milk. So if you were making just a small square baking dish, you would use 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of sugar, and 1 cup of milk, and then enough fruit to cover the bottom of your pan. And you can use any kind of fruit that you like. Peach, of course, is something that you see a lot with barbecues and barbecue restaurants. It's just a southern staple. But you can, we're going to also make a berry, just triple berry cobbler. You can use apples, pears, just individual berries, whatever you want. Any kind of fruit works with that. Whatever your favorite is that you like, almost anything will do. I normally will use self-rising flour just because it's easier, but I didn't have enough to make the 2 big cobblers, but I had lots of all-purpose flour, so I just made my own self-rising flour, which you used to not have self-rising flour, so it's how people always use flour in their baking. All right, so we have, like I said, the butter was in the bottom, our peaches are in there, and then the easiest part is we're just going to pour the batter just willy-nilly kind of all around, and then I'll show you what it looks like as soon as we get it all in there. No particular way, as long as you get it pretty evenly distributed throughout your pan, that's all that matters. Then you can kind of swirl it a little bit, but you don't want to stir it. But if you need to kind of swirl your batter, move it around a little bit, you can do that. Then, and I also in the batter had vanilla extract and cinnamon. And because this is peach and it goes great with cinnamon, I'm just going to sprinkle some cinnamon over the top. If you want to get really fancy, you can also do like an oatmeal crumble with brown sugar and oatmeal and sprinkle that over the top and make it fancy, but we're just making regular home style peach cobbler. So there you go. We have the peaches, the batter just poured randomly around on top, and then we sprinkled it with some cinnamon. Now we have our oven preheated to 375. I have a gas, I can't figure out where, oh, here we go. I lost my oven mitts already. I have a gas stove and oven, so if I had an electric oven that maybe didn't get so hot, I might do 400 or even 425, but hopefully you know your oven and you know how it cooks. So 375 is what I have it on. That's gonna bake for probably about 45 minutes to an hour. We're gonna check it, and when it's browned on top and kind of crispy around the edges, that's when we know that it's finished. So there's not a certain amount that you can set your timer and go check it and it's gonna be perfect every time. You may figure that out based on the pan and the oven that you use, but for me, I put it in there for about 45 minutes and then I check it, and if I want it to be more brown or more crispy, I'm just going to put it back in there for another 10 or 15 minutes depending on how done it was to begin with. Alright, so we're going to reuse this bowl. So I'm going to rinse it out real quickly. And we're putting the same exact thing right back in it, so we don't have to get too carried away with washing it. Just gonna grab a paper towel and just do a quick dry on it, just only because I don't want our flour too stuck to the inside. But once we put the milk in there, it'll all mix up just fine. All right, so the all-purpose flour needs some help because it's not going to rise on its own. So you can mix 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So in here, I have a cup of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and I'll show you that, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's what I use, but you can, any brand is going to do the trick. Then on top of that, I put another cup of all-purpose flour, another 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The reason I did that is because you want it to be completely incorporated together, and I'm also sifting it just to keep it from clumping so much and to help mix those ingredients together, because you want that baking powder and salt completely distributed in your flour. And we're not going to use a hand mixer or a stand mixer or anything. We're just going to use, I'm going to use a whisk to mix up the flour really well. Then I'm going to use a fork to mix all the ingredients together, because that's how I've always done it. All right, so again, and I'll show you, I just have gold medal all-purpose flour. A lot of people say that the brand of flour doesn't matter. Some people swear by particular brands of flour, so it's completely up to you what you decide to use. For me, I try to do gold medal or Martha White just because that's what I like. So we're going to put that in there. Then 1 teaspoon and 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And I'm just eyeballing it. I'm using 1 teaspoon size measuring spoon. So there's our 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then 1 more cup of flour will be our 4th cup of flour. And this it doesn't require as much precision as if you were baking bread or a cake from scratch or something like that. This is much more forgiving. So 1 cup. 1.5 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Of course, if you're just using self-rising flour, which is what I normally would be doing, you don't add the baking powder or the salt. You just scoop your scoops of flour in there and you're ready to go. You can also, if you want to be especially easy and foolproof, you can use Bisquick or some other type of pancake or biscuit making mix. The pancake mix you can use, it's just going to be sweeter because it has sugar in it. Alright, so that's all of our flour. And like I said, you want to be sure that that baking powder and salt is well incorporated. So I'm just going to give that a quick mix with the whisk. Then we're also going to put about, I would say about 2 to 3 tablespoons of cinnamon in our batter. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, toss it up. Again, it's not an exact science. If you like cinnamon, put more. If you don't like cinnamon, put less. If you don't like cinnamon at all, you don't have to put it in there. That's just an extra thing that I like to do that gives it a little extra flavor. Especially if you're using peaches or apples or pears, cinnamon is really good with it. Alright, so that's our flour mixture. Now we're going to add, for each cup of flour, we're going to add a cup of sugar. So with the butter and the sugar, obviously this is not a health food item, but it'll be a hit at your barbecue. 3 and 4. So if you're using a regular 9x13 casserole dish, you're just going to do half of this. And if it's, depending on the size, if you have I have different, I think 9x11, 9x13. So the bigger ones, I'm going to do 2 cups of everything. The little bit smaller one, I'm going to do 1.5 cups. So you just have to test it out. You can always start with 1 cup of everything, mix it all together, pour it on your fruit. Then if it looks like you need more, then do another 1/2 cup of everything. Alright, so just mixing the sugar into the flour. Then I'm going to do about 2 tablespoons of vanilla. And then we add our milk. So I'm going to put the first 2 cups of milk in and start mixing. The first batch that I made for the peach, I put the 2 cups in, and then I poured about another cup in, and I actually didn't need that full 2nd cup, so I put about 1 cup, probably about 3 3/4 cups of milk in there. And grab the milk. So we're going to do the same method this time. That's 1 cup. And you want your batter to be a little thinner than cake batter, or, well, a little thinner than pancake batter, close to the consistency of cake batter. So it's going to be pretty thin. We're just going to keep mixing. Until we have that completely incorporated. You also can add a little bit of vegetable oil or melted butter to it if you want it extra buttery. I put quite a bit of butter in our pan, so I'm not going to add any to the batter. I think we'll be good there. Alright, so I'm going to put about, I don't know if you can see, that's about like pancake batter. So we want it a little more thinned out, just so that it's fluffy, and on the underside that touches the fruit and the juice from the fruit, you want it to be a little gooey there and then crispy on top. So we don't want it too watery, but if you get it too thick, it's going to be like biscuit on top. Alright, so we have about 2/3 of a cup. So now we're at 3 cups and 2/3 of a cup. And I think that's going to be just about right. And again, you just slowly add it so that you can always add more milk, but if you get it too watery, then you have to add more flour and sugar, and then that's just kind of a pain and a little bit of a disaster. So you don't want to do that. Alright, I'm going to let that just sit for about a minute. I'm going to put the milk away. So how many of you make Cobbler? Does anyone ever made Cobbler? Let me know in the comments if you have and what kind you've made. And if not, let me know if you're going to try it and what you're going to try, what kind of fruit you're going to try. All right, so I'm just going to keep blending that a little bit, kind of as the flour absorbs the milk. The other thing is, as you saw, we didn't have an egg in here. So the butter and milk are the only dairy or animal products in there. So if you're trying to make it vegan, just use plant butter and plant milk. And I drink almond milk and I use almond milk a lot. I've never used it to make my cobbler, but I'm sure that it'll be pretty much the same as if you were using cow's milk. Excuse me. So let me know if you try it with plant butter and plant milk, how it turns out, or if you had to adjust your recipe at all. All right, so put away a couple of things, and next, actually I forgot I was going to do this while we were mixing. So I can show you, I guess, before I melt it. So I just have sticks of butter, a stick and a half of butter chopped up in my pan. Whoops, don't do that. And I'm sticking it in the oven to let it melt. It'll just take maybe a minute to melt in there. Then we're going to put this one together and put it in the oven. We'll probably, in about 30 minutes, I will probably switch. These pans are too big to put long ways into the oven, so they have to stack one over the other, which I normally try not to do, but I don't really have the luxury today for the timing to be able to bake them one at a time. So in about 30 minutes, I will switch them, put the top one on the bottom one on the top, just to make sure that they brown equally with one blocking either side. All right, so that's all good. The sugar, any brand will do it. That's what I was using if you're interested. I don't have a particular brand of sugar that I always use. I usually just find whatever is a good price at the store, and that's what I get. So just doing a little cleanup duty while we're waiting on our butter to melt. And I have one stick of butter that I'm leaving out that's getting soft as it sits out, and with that one I'm going to just slice it in small slices. When it starts to kind of get brown on top, I'm going to put those little pieces on top and just make it extra buttery and brown on top with that. If you want to do your crumble, that's also when you can do that. You're just going to mix in butter, preferably brown sugar, and some oats. So I usually don't have quick oats. Most of the time I don't have quick oats. I have steel cut oats, but really any of them will do. So if you have quick oats, those are probably better, but I use the steel cut, and I mix a little cinnamon, a little oats, some brown sugar, and some butter, and just until it's crumbly, and then you sprinkle that on top, and just kind of gives you a little crispy, crumbly top. All right, so that didn't take long for our butter to melt. For this, we're using a triple berry blend, and this just came from Sam's Club, but you can get it any grocery store, but I just picked it up at Sam's because this was a big bag. Trying to figure out how to open it, or it'll still ziplock if I want it to. All right, there we go. All right, so this has blackberries, raspberries, blueberries. So blackberry cobbler, probably my favorite of all. But this one, blackberries tend to be expensive, even the frozen ones. So this is what I usually get, just because I can almost always find a bigger bag, even at the regular grocery store. And it's pretty delicious. My husband likes the raspberries and the blackberries, so it's always a hit with him. Excuse me. It is allergy season here, and I've been sneezing and losing my voice a little bit, but nothing too bad. I already had COVID back in the fall. That was no fun at all. I will pick allergies over COVID anytime. All right, so that was enough berries to completely cover the bottom of the pan. I'll show you just in a second. Let me put these berries back in the freezer. They're just frozen berries. Took them out of the freezer this morning when I started, and I'm sticking them right back in there. We'll have enough for a smoothie, or could even make a small cobbler with what's left. All right, so I'm just going to show you. You can see the berries have completely covered the bottom, but they're not too thick. The difference with this and our peaches is that even though these are frozen and they will have some liquid, it's not what we had in the peaches. You definitely want to have that liquid. Normally, I would pick up some fruit juice to add to it. Completely forgot, but I had a fruit punch mix, so that'll do the trick. Anything that goes with the fruit that you're using. So if you want to use frozen peaches instead of canned peaches, grab some peach juice. I usually get any kind of berry juice. I'm just going to put the rest of it in there. There's not much. So that was a quart for this size pan. That was a quart of liquids that you'll put in to make sure that you have plenty of juice. And you can see now it doesn't cover the fruit, but it comes almost up to the probably about the 3/4 mark of the fruit. Now our batters had time to kind of incorporate all that liquid absorbed into the dry ingredients, and once again we're just going to pour it over. This you can see a lot easier than the peaches because the batter is a completely different color. The peaches, it kind of blended in. So we're just going to get that mixed around and make sure that you have some in the corners and around the edges. You don't want to dump it all in the middle, and it'll kind of redistribute a little bit on its own, but we want to get it divided out as best as we can. So now that has kind of mixed in with the juices, so it's not as easy to see now as when I was pouring it in, but you can see that the batter kind of sank under the juice and the berries, but as it cooks, the batter is going to rise to the top and the fruit's going to fall to the bottom. Just going to open this up here. It's really heavy, so I have to be careful. Burned my hand just a little bit the last time, so be careful when you're putting that in. I didn't put the cinnamon on top of that one, so you can, but you don't have to. I put the extra on the peaches just because the cinnamon goes really well with the berries. We had plenty of cinnamon in the batter, so I'm just going to leave that as is. And that's it. So we'll be back when they're finished and show you what the final product looks like. So see you back in a bit. Alright, so our cobblers are completely finished. They are on the oven cooling off, and I'm going to put some foil on them and got to get going so I'm not late getting the food there. And as you can hear in the background, the fan for the oven is on, so hopefully that's not too loud and you can still hear me. But I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera around and let you check out the cobbler. Alright, so here is our berry cobbler. You can see that all of the cake part came up to the top, and it's nice and crispy on the edges. And there's some in the middle too, but the berries are kind of bubbled up over it. Then we have the peach, and same thing, it's nice and crispy on the edges. All of that batter came up to the top and cooked really nicely. It's nice and brown. And it was all bubbly in the center when I took it out. So the peach was finished first. It's cooled for about 20 minutes. And the berry I just took out about 5 minutes ago. So it's all finished, and we're going to pack up and head to the barbecue. Thanks again for watching the video today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a big thumbs up and shoot some comments below. Let me know if you've made cobbler and if you do it differently, or if you've never made it before but you're going to try now. Let me know and send us a copy, or send us a picture of your final product so we can see how it turned out. All right, have a great day. Blessings to you all. Bye.